Hello, my name's Sheehan, and today I'd like to talk about Wozzeck by Berg. And I'd like to go through this great 20th century opera, exploring the plot, exploring the structure of this mighty work, exploring how the music complements the action. And if you're anything like me and you enjoy following the structure of music as you listen closely, hopefully this video and indeed my channel might be of interest to you. So anyway, how was this piece composed? Well, Berg in 1914 saw a production of Wozzeck by Georg Büchner. This is a play written in 1836, left incomplete at Büchner's death in 1837. And interesting footnote, this is called Wozzeck, not Wojciech, because it took him years to decipher Büchner's handwriting. But anyway, that's a trivial point. But Berg was just drawn to this story, and he was determined to set this play to music. His passion for the project was interrupted by the onset of World War I. And indeed, he was called to fight in the Austro-Hungarian army. It wasn't until 1917 that he was able to come back and devote some sustained effort and time into the work. And actually, the piece wasn't finished until 1921. It wasn't premiered until 1925 under no less a conductor than Erich Kleiber, with the Berlin Staatsoper, and it was a sensation. How strange, scary, unsettling must this opera have been at its premiere. The Nazis, of course, banned it, the Philistines that they were, but since then, throughout the rest of the 20th century into the 21st century, this opera is seen as one of the truly great achievements of modernism, of 20th century art music. So that's a bit of the background about Wozzeck. What about the music? Well, from the very opening bars, you know this is not going to be an easy listen. This might not be an opera to do your ironing to, or to jog to, or something like that. This is music which requires a degree of participation from the listener, a degree of concentration to get the most out of it. Not that this is kind of academic, rarefied music. This is very immediate music. But of course it's atonal. What does that mean? Well, we don't have the 12 notes of the chromatic scale in hierarchies like you do in tonal music. Now this lack of harmonic syntax, which our ears are used to from, at least the time of Bach onwards, in terms of major, minor scales, modulations, etc., creates a sense of disorientation, a sense of being unsettled, sense of a rootlessness, which comes with any music without a tonal anchor. And this, of course, chimes in perfectly with the subject matter of the opera. This deeply anxiety-provoking and pessimistic story of this man abused and humiliated by all around him, driven to murder and then suicide. And this atonality, of course, reflects the horrors of the First World War when Berg wrote this. Although I understand Berg wasn't at the absolute forefront in the trenches or whatever, he certainly knew the horrors of war. All those men of his generation did. And the subject matter of the original play and what was going on around him in Central Europe at this terribly brutal and dark time finds its greatest expression in this harrowing, disturbing music. Now, the music isn't devoid of tradition, despite its atonality. Berg, like in many of his other works, uses an array of established forms from the Baroque and classical eras, fascinatingly integrated into this atonal music. It's the structures in this music which help give Wozzeck a sense of coherence, stops it just sounding like an extended free-for-all of unrelated notes. Within the score, there are fugues, there's canons, theme and variations, passacaglia. There's even a sonata form structure in Wozzeck. All this tradition in the musical forms really anchor this work and give it a solidity, a sturdiness, despite the very new language of the music itself. Added to this, and again no doubt inspired by Berg's experiences of the war, and indeed the overtly militaristic and nationalist characteristics of this kind of Central European culture he grew up in, that the score is littered with army fanfares, military tattoos, marching rhythms. It really is a characteristic of this score, and it and again adds this immediacy to the music. Something familiar yet very strange as well, heard in the context of this drama. Another thing about Wozzeck is, indeed like lots of Berg's work, this harsh atonality is interspersed with moments of melody. Now, it's never completely tonal, but nonetheless you hear melodies coming in here and there. A notable example is Andrés's hunting song in the first act, which could be something from Der Freischütz or something. And not only that, you have like a lullaby Marie sings to a child. You have this kind of dizzying array of waltzes, which, you know, very much from the kind of Straussian or Mahlerian sound world. There is this kind of, every now and then, Berg brings in this sensuous orchestral sound, which works really well because it's such a kind of, it kind of humanises, I guess, this most bleak of stories and this most brutal of stories. And listen out also for the Sprechgesang, like this kind of halfway house between singing and speaking. You might know that from Pierre Lunaire, for instance, by Schoenberg, Berg's teacher. But he employs it to great effect in this opera. So listen out for that. Now, the opera's in 3 acts, and each act consists of 5 scenes. And there's no messing about in this opera. It's over in an hour and a half. It's very short. And each of the scenes are kind of brought together by these orchestral interludes whilst the scene is changing. And they're worthy of a study in their own right, actually. They just bring everything together and give a sense of pace and coherence to these often splintered dramatic fragments in this work. Berg brings unity through this opera as well as these structures I talked about. He also employs certain leitmotifs to represent various characters, which we'll go through as we listen to the opera. So onwards to Act 1. So Act 1 consists of 5 scenes, like Act 2 and 3. Each scene joined together by this orchestral interlude type music, and the whole opera begins like this. Wozzeck is shaving the captain of his regiment. The captain's horrible to Wozzeck, treats him as a kind of subhuman. As far as the captain's concerned, Wozzeck is just there to be berated and humiliated, and to serve him, basically. Wozzeck receives some small payment for the captain for these services. Although there are these classical forms going on, as you listen to the opera, it's probably best just to see each scene as kind of through composed, consisting of these exchanges between Wozzeck and those around him. But there are motifs to help us distinguish the characters in this score. And the captain's one we just heard in the extract right at the very beginning of the opera. That comes back all the time in the opera, usually when the captain is on the scene. The captain's telling Wozzeck to slow down while he's shaving him. And then the captain kind of uses Wozzeck as a sounding post to expound his existential angst. The captain sings about this kind of the vast expanses of eternity, etc. While the captain waxes in this way, Wozzeck just replies, "Jawohl, Hauptmann." He's not allowed to say anything of importance with the captain. We have this evocation of a wind, kind of a portent of the terrors of what's to come. The captain mocks Wozzeck's illegitimate child. This finally provokes Wozzeck to sing at length with a degree of passion and pain. The words Wozzeck sings here, "Poor folk like us need money." It's a motif which is very important in this opera. We hear it in a kind of transfigured way right near the end of the opera as well. It's this motif here. Wir arme Leute, sehen Sie. Wozzeck, in this extended soliloquy, sings of the pain and suffering of being a poor person in this harsh and unfeeling world. Finally, the captain pays Wozzeck, and Wozzeck goes off, and we hear the first of the scene changes. These incredibly expressive, often very short pieces of orchestral music. This takes us to scene 2. Wozzeck is working in the field with his friend Andres, and Wozzeck has the kind of series of terrifying visions. Wozzeck, first of all, believes the field is cursed, and then his friend Andres sings this hunting song. This is one of those moments which Berg puts in this forbidding score, which is a melody. It's very kind of melodic. Das ist die schöne Jägerei. Das ist die schöne Jägerei. Dieses nicht jedes Mal. Wozzeck sees a vision of a head, and then he sees fire, the fiery sky, the sunset, which again is a kind of foretaste of of the blood shed near the end of the opera. It's at the end of this scene we have, I think, one of the most beautiful passages in Wozzeck. The next change of scene, with these gorgeous descending string parts. Rich late romantic music, this bit, but again it just adds that kind of much needed contrast in this stark expressionistic work. We also hear quotes of Andrés's hunting song in this change of scene. In scene 3 we meet Marie, and she lusts after this drum major, and we hear her bickering with her friend Margaret. And this is where we start to hear these kind of military rhythms going on, these fanfares as the drum major shows off past Marie's window. It's like a Germanic marching band put through a blender, isn't it? It's kind of sounds very familiar, but very kind of distorted and weird at the same time. It's here actually in this scene that we have another one of those striking tonal, more tonal passages anyway, melodic passages, with Marie singing a lullaby for her child. There's this gorgeous moment in this scene as well where Marie's kind of waiting and we hear this spellbinding, magical music, these kind of descending and rising scales in the celesta. I just love this moment. I think it's just so beautiful. It's almost as if this score is just kind of so dense, and then all of a sudden there's just this moment of repose and stasis as Marie kind of daydreams. However, the piece doesn't last long. Wozzeck arrives. He's an absent father. He's not there for long. He shares some of his horrifying visions with Marie before he leaves her some money and scarpers again. Marie is left terrified. We have another exhilarating change of scene before we meet the second of Wozzeck's chief torturers, if you like, the doctor. The doctor is performing medical experiments on Wozzeck. Wozzeck has this ridiculously restricted diet. I think it's beans or peas, and this scene is ingenious because it's a Passacaglia. A Passacaglia is a theme in variations, and we hear the theme on a solo cello. And interestingly, the tune of this Passacaglia uses all 12 notes of the chromatic scale, almost like a tone row, which of course the Second Viennese School would start to use pretty soon after this piece. It's rarely spelled out like that, but you hear many repeated notes, almost as if it's like the obsessive thinking of the Doctor, and the fact that it's a Passacaglia theme just keeps going round and round and round, suggests something of his closed mind, perhaps obsessive mind. Here's the beginning of this scene. It's a superbly composed scene, this, because as the variations go, we keep hearing this tone row going round and round and round. We hear the Doctor getting more and more worked up, getting more and more egotistical about his achievements. Wozzeck has another fiery vision, as well as these weird toadstools. Right at the end of this set of variations, he's completely drunk on his own pride. He goes off on this kind of egocentric rant. Wozzeck eventually leaves, and we're into the next change of scene, before we come to the final scene of the first act, the streets before Marie's door. And here the drum major tries to seduce Marie, and she initially is reluctant, but eventually he gets his way. And we hear the drum major's theme here. That kind of thing. Da-da-dum, bum, 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 bum. As the drum major gets his way with Marie, we hear some very violent music in the brass. Right at the end of the act, and this is an interesting feature of this opera, you have this this trill, and the music kind of just stops mid-air. In Act 2, Wozzeck finds out about Marie's infidelity, and he's plagued by more and more disturbing visions. Again, of course, it's in 5 scenes, joined together by these pieces of orchestral music. And we begin in Marie's room, where she is admiring herself in front of a kind of broken piece of mirror with these lovely earrings the drum major has given her. She also urges her child to go to sleep, but frightens her child. We begin the act. The music actually very much a continuation from the last bars of the first act. It's kind of nebulous, mysterious music. And soon when we see Marie again, we hear one of her motifs, this sighing idea. And as she looks at her earrings, listen out for these little splashes of metallic colour in the celesta and the strings. It's very high chords. Eventually Wozzeck comes in and he notices the earrings. Where has she got these earrings from, he wonders. And we hear some more violent music reflecting his jealousy and his paranoia. It's also in this scene that Wozzeck sings his motif from the first act again, and he says the same words. Wir arme Leute, poor folk like us. Wir arme Leute. After Wozzeck leaves, Marie bewails her guilt and shame. And we're reminded of that sighing motif we heard at the beginning of the scene. And the change of scene music is really exciting. We hear music which is reminiscent of the drum major's rhythm. Da da dum 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 dum. In scene 2, the doctor and the captain meet in the street, and the doctor seems to terrify the captain about his health. Kind of a darkly comic scene at the beginning. Wozzeck's two chief tormentors kind of tormenting each other, if you like. And we're reminded of the captain's motif. As the doctor terrifies the captain about the state of his health, we have the music breaks into one of the waltzes which pop up in this score so much, particularly in Act 2 and Act 3. Then the doctor and the captain see Wozzeck and they stop him in the street as well. And there's such a wonderful moment in the score here. I love that outer sync effect between the winds and the brass. Berg now provides the listeners with a tour de force of contrapuntal composition. We have a double fugue where Wozzeck is mocked by the doctor and captain for the way he is employed to shave beards. We have two themes to listen out for here. The first one goes like this, which actually is a version of the captain's theme. We hear it in the English horn, and we have an answer in the bassoon. You hear the captain whistling away as well in this part of the scene. But then listen out for the cellos, because they provide us with a second theme which is treated fugally, which kind of represents the doctor, I think. The way these two melodies are combined in this fugal texture is absolutely wonderful. Now they decide to mock Wozzeck about Marie's unfaithfulness and infidelity, and this seems to tip Wozzeck over the edge. He threatens suicide. Wozzeck then runs off, and we go into the scene change music, and this time the orchestral forces are stripped right down. We have a chamber orchestra now accompanying the singers, which is entirely appropriate because in scene 3, Wozzeck raves and confronts Marie, and it's here that the knife is first mentioned. Marie says to him, "Better a knife blade in my heart than lay a hand upon me." And spookily, Wozzeck echoes, "Better a knife." So just have a listen to this passage. We then come to the change of scene music, and it's here that Berg really is drawing on the Austro-Hungarian tradition here, with a succession of waltzes which will take us in to the tavern gardens where the next scene is held. The music becomes very tuneful and accessible here, although quite nightmarish as well, expressionistic. So when we get to scene 4 with in the tavern gardens, all these kind of drunken lowlifes are bantering around. The music's delightful here. I saw a production of this recently, and the chamber orchestra was on stage with the singers. It was just so delightful, so brilliantly done, and the music's just full of these waltzes, kind of refracted through broken mirrors. Eventually, Marie and a dancing major come waltzing in, and Wozzeck sees them. He by now is completely crazed and riven with jealousy and paranoia. It's almost Mahlerian, isn't it, this music? And I just love the band instruments Berg introduces in this little ensemble. We have a guitar, a zither, an out-of-tune upright piano. I love that. It's just such a joy to hear these lovely, colourful sounds in this score. Indeed, there's so many great tunes, believe it or not, in this act, in this atonal opera. We have this hunting song. All the kind of guys in the pub start singing this hunting song. Goes like this. You hear Andres sing a song then at the end. lot of us. Andres notices Wozzeck and quizzes him about where he's sitting in the tavern. And we have this apprentice who moralises in a drunken way. What I love about this moment as well is all of a sudden you hear an accordion play as the band gets together, and it's just an E minor chord. And you think to yourself, my goodness, there is just a straight minor triad, the simplest thing imaginable in this amazingly complex work. I always love listening out for that. And just after this E minor chord, we have this guy, he's described as the idiot. He foresees the murder of Marie by Wozzeck. We hear some more waltz music before we go into the next change of scene, which is thrilling. Final scene of Act 2, Scene 5, we're in the guard room in the barracks. And Wozzeck kind of raves amongst the sleeping soldiers who are all snoring. Apparently Berg remembered the snoring of his fellow soldiers whilst he was serving in the army. And so he kind of recaptures it here in this music. It's actually very beautiful, the snoring of the soldiers. Have a listen to this. So eerie and strange, but very beautiful as well. Listen out for that very high note on the double bass as well. It's kind of got a very strained quality to it. One of the features of this score, actually, with the string instruments, the solo string parts, which you have here and there, Berg often requires the soloist to play the string lower than is commonly used. It gives it a slightly more strained, strangled sound. Eventually the drum major comes in and kind of brags and boasts about his conquest of Marie. And indeed he fights Wozzeck. Wozzeck is defeated. Listen out for the drum major's motif. Da-da-dum-dum-dum-dum, as the two of them fight. Wozzeck is left humiliated on the floor, and the curtain comes down on the second act. In Act 3, the drama ends tragically with the murder of Marie by Wozzeck, his death by drowning in a lake as he tries to get rid of the murder weapon, and indeed the tragedy seems to be certain to repeat itself one day with their child, the young boy. It begins in the first scene with Marie kind of identifying herself with passages from the Bible, particularly that of Mary Magdalene. We begin with this rather tuneful passage. It's actually a canon between different instruments of the orchestra. This canon actually is a theme which is varied. It's a set of theme and variations. In the third variation it's turned into this. The fifth variation, where she seems to be, in a heartbreaking way, talking about her son, we hear a solo horn playing that melody. So melodic, this music. Not a word you'd instantly apply to such a prominent composer of the Second Viennese School, but that's what Berg's like. That's probably why he's more popular than the other two, I guess. When Marie identifies herself with Mary Magdalene, remember she's the fallen woman in the New Testament, we have a new fugue, which goes into the scene change. After the scene change, we're on a forest path by a pool, and this is where the deed's going to be committed. Wozzeck initially quizzes Marie in a rather garbled but ominous way, and as the moon rises, Wozzeck kills her, stabs her in the throat with this knife. Here's the music as the moon rises. This is where he kills her. Right at the end of this scene, we have this sustained B note, which some have suggested stands for the knife itself, and this explosive chord afterwards. It sounds very much to me like the Coriolan Overture by Beethoven. We're then back to the tavern for the third scene, and here Wozzeck encourages everyone to dance in a manic way. He summons Margaret as well, Marie's friend. It begins with this really quirky polka played on the slightly out of tune upright piano. However, Margaret notices the blood on Wozzeck's hand, and he's called out by her as a murderer. In the next scene, Wozzeck tries to come to terms with what he's done, this terrible murder, and he throws the knife into the lake. And one thing I notice about this music here, somewhat perhaps a bit surprising, is some of the music sounds a bit bluesy. Berg employs a kind of blues scale here. Have a listen to this. pentatonic, whatever. It always strikes me as sounding like the blues, this bit. I suppose Wozzeck does have the blues. Wozzeck then drowns himself in the lake, and the moon comes up blood red through the sky. Remember how nature in this opera seems to foretell or echo what's happened between the characters, particularly the murder. And the doctor and the captain walk by, and they hear this noise in the lake, and of course they're hearing Wozzeck drown. We have our last change of scene, where we hear in this rather romantic, full-scored orchestral texture some of the motifs we've heard throughout the opera, including Wozzeck's own motif, We Poor Folk. And we finally go into the final scene. And this is a heartbreaking scene because we're in front of Marie's house, and Wozzeck's and Marie's child is told that his mother's dead. We have this very tuneful, childlike nursery rhyme music to begin with. With this devastatingly tragic ending, it seems as the whole cycle of misery and despair is just inevitable in this young child's life as he grows up. It's so depressing, this opera. But then we do have a beautiful coda, some more beautiful music which rounds off the whole piece. Again, like this, this trill we've heard in the end of the first act. Have a listen to this. And that's Wozzeck, a 20th century masterpiece, and music which on the face of it would be difficult to listen to. But it isn't really. Give it a few listens. The way the story is brought across is so accessible. It provides such an emotional wallop, a dagger to the heart, if you like. It's an opera which deals with themes which are always relevant. That of people exploiting the weak, people trapped into their own personal hells, and cycles of violence and abuse repeating themselves. Yes, it's a grim and depressing opera. Yes, the music is angular and dissonant, atonal, but there are moments of absolute beauty as well. If you don't know this opera, check it out. Thank you for watching. Please click like and subscribe, and if there's any other works you'd like me to look at, please put them in the comments below, and one day I'll do my best to get through my list. All the best, take care. And I'd just like to dedicate this video to my brother Luke, who sadly passed away of cancer earlier this month. May he rest in peace and rise in glory. Amen. Thank you for watching this. Bye-bye.